Kia e te whānau e te kanihera o te aorere whae ta Mouteranga kia marama, kia whae taki, kia whae mahi katoa. Tu maia, tu kaha, aroha atu, aroha mai, tātou e tātou katoa, tihei Māori. Apologies, we have nothing. I think everyone is either here or online. Public forum. There is no registered speakers. Declarations of interest. Councillor Mackenzie.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, just in relation to an item on the confidential agenda. So do you want me to leave it for then, or shall I just register it now? Now. So just to conflict in relation to the contract for electricity. Thank you.
Similarly, just a late report regarding your electricity contract.
Okay, thank you. So that'll be noted. Late items, one of which has just been referred to in relation to the new electricity contract and regional deals. Someone move, they be the resolution contained in the agenda, move Councillor Mailings, seconded Councillor Mackenzie. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Minutes of previous meetings. The open part of the meeting on the 28th of November 2024. Councillor Dallas, seconded Councillor Hill. All in favour, please say aye. And the confidential part of the same meeting. Move Councillor Hill, seconded Councillor Dakey. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Right, so first up, in terms of reports, we've got the referral report from the Regional Landfill Business Unit, Mike and Nathan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good morning, councillors. Going to take the report as read, and we've got Nathan here to answer questions as well if needed. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Nathan, anything to add? No? Open for comment, feedback, questions, moving and or seconding.
Mr. Mayor. Firstly, just like to thank Nathan, particularly for the work done around the business plan. It's been to the business unit 2 weeks ago now. Haven't had time to keep track of the weeks actually. So yeah, there's some adjustments, but a positive plan going forward. So thanks to the team, some positive changes happening at the landfill, and really looking forward to a positive year. So with that, I'm happy to move the 2 resolutions.
Thank you. So it's been moved. Deputy Mayor Brian. Yep. So second, do you wish to speak? Councillor Greening.
Thank you. Just a general question, really, which is for staff. Does the business plan, or is the business plan consistent with our long-term plan, or will it require additional funding?
Through the chair, nothing. Sorry, through the chair, the business plan essentially, from a capital funding perspective, is the same as the long-term plan. We received feedback from officers of the councils to try to make sure that the business plan was the same as the long-term plan. In terms of the operational funding and essentially the gate fee at the landfill, that is not the same. The reason it's not the same is because in the interim between the long-term plan being developed and the business plan being developed, the central government changed the waste minimisation levy, and they put in additional levies that we needed to accommodate in our fee to basically recover and to run a balanced books. So.
Okay, thank you. Anything further? If not, we'll put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Dog control bylaw. It's Jamie. Right. Just one. Welcome, Kat, Kim, all and sundry. I'll hand over to you to introduce the report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the purpose of the report is to provide the recommendations of the dog control policy and bylaw hearings and deliberations panel meeting. The panel consisted of Councillor Chris Hill as the chair and Councillors Celia Butler, Joe Ellis, Brent Madu and Dan Shalcrass. We publicly consulted on the bylaw between 7th of August and the 8th of September, and during that time we received 645 submissions. Hearings were held on the 25th of September and then deliberations subsequently on the 20th of November. The staff and the panel are recommending a number of changes to the draft bylaw in response to the feedback we received in the submissions, and some of the key changes include Tomatea Reserve being changed from a prohibited area to a controlled exercise area to enable access through to Pakawa Beach. The beach also had its controlled exercise area extended up as far as Tomatea Point. The boat ramp and car park were removed from the Ruataniwha Inlet prohibited areas, and a clause was added to enable dogs to be in the inlet if they're contained in a vessel. Paewhakaoho River mouth was changed from a prohibited area to a seasonally restricted area. And Motueka Reserve beachfront was also changed from an on-leash area to a controlled exercise area. Pohara Beach from the eastern camp boundary to Selwyn Street Reserve was changed from a seasonally prohibited area to a seasonal leash control area. Tokungawa Reserve was removed from the policy and bylaw. Little Kaiteriteri, Dummy Bay and Stevens Bay were changed from leash control areas to seasonal or time-based restricted areas. Hoddy Estuary Park was changed from a prohibited area to just prohibited on the vegetated margins of the inlet and leash control for the remainder of the park. The Railway Reserve section of Tasman's Great Tass Trail was changed from a leash control area to a controlled exercise area. And there was a 6 kilometre long section of Tasman's Great Tass Trail in Tapawera, which was changed from a prohibited area to a leash control area. And that change was tabled by staff at the deliberations meeting. So this consultation attracted quite a significant level of public attention, and in some locations highlighted some quite divided perspectives within the communities. While not every submitter will be getting the outcome that they hoped for today, both the staff and the panel members have given all the perspectives thoughtful consideration. What is being recommended today is intended to strike a balanced approach which protects wildlife in high priority areas while still accommodating dogs and their owners with enjoyable and adequate spaces to exercise. We'd like to thank the panel for the extensive time involved in reading, hearing and understanding the views of all submissions, their high level of engagement and commitment to the process, and for approaching the decision making with an open mind. Thanks.
Thanks, Kat, for the introduction. I will come across to Councillor Hill.
Thank you through you, Mayor Tim. Thanks, Kat. It was quite a panel process actually, and because some aspects that were being considered were quite complex. There's quite a bit to consider in them. I would add, I think, that the areas where the sort of conflicted approaches or ideas were really at the margins, and that drew the attention, I think, of people generally. But actually, if you look at the whole of the district and all of the coastline, saying Golden Bay or wherever, actually the points of conflict were really at the margins. And I'm not sure, I guess people understand generally out in the communities that areas not identified by the bylaw are by default come under the Dog Control Act and are actually areas that they can take their dogs under control. So yeah, I guess I would sort of make that point that this has been a real focus on some sort of particular areas, but actually the breadth of the matter hasn't quite been the focus of perhaps media or submissions even. And we had a pretty interesting day long here of verbal submissions. It was really rich, actually, and, you know, opposing views in some ways, but a lot of people were really considered and saying, look, I've got a dog and I'd like to be able to take it anywhere, but also care about the birds. And I think people were really thoughtful in how they went about what they were presenting. But I would say that since the deliberations and this bylaw was produced, some panel members have been approached by interested people with making commentary around how they're disappointed in some aspect of it, and they'd like to see further change, not really understanding that this isn't the forum to be doing that, and we simply can't be seen as a council to go through a deliberations process that's really open and transparent. And you know, there were dog owners and non-dog owners on the panel, and to go through that process and come landed where we have. If we were to make any amendments today, I don't see that's the process. You know, that's a very good process at all for councillors, and when we can go about it. But what we're doing then, if it's based on what people have implored us to do post deliberations, it just sort of undermines the integrity of the whole process, really. So I wanted to say that because we have been approached by people wanting things to be changed. So you'd have to do another whole round, wouldn't you? And we could just spend years doing this. So I think it's really important that the integrity of the deliberations process is upheld today. And overall, there are increased protections for wildlife. And from the draft bylaw to where we are today, there are reduced, actually, restrictions on dogs, which Kat, you've just read out. So I encourage everybody here to adopt this, and particularly want to say that I felt as a panel that we were incredibly well served by staff. The amount of material that needed to be presented to us in a coherent way, you know, to weigh up, I thought was an exceptional level of service, actually. So thank you. I'd like to move the resolution.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hill. Councillor Murray, then Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'd like to second the resolution and just, I guess, pick up on some key points of Councillor Hill in the deliberations. Is that I too was one of those councillors and panel members that received emails from people post deliberations and have intentionally not responded to them yet, but we'll certainly do that after we make a decision today. But there was certainly robustness around the hearing, around the information, the quality of staff assistance to help us get to our balance. And I guess that is the balance. And whether the balance is tilted slightly one way or the other way, I'm not sure. But I remember saying at the deliberations hearing that I couldn't come up with a better solution. So we've recognised that actually just by being a dog owner by default doesn't mean you're anti-conservation. And there was some real splits in our community that implied that you either were a dog owner or you believed in conservation. And the other thing I learned through the panel was actually the Wildlife Act and a $20,000 consequence for danger to wild or to harm to wildlife already exists. So there is already a provision that has a much bigger consequence than our dog bylaw for doing that. But I guess we have increased the emphasis on wildlife aspect in terms of the aims and objectives. But this is about a dog control bylaw. It isn't exclusively for wildlife. And we had an ER specialist, I remember, come and talk to us about incidents where dog attacks people. And it was sort of lost in our deliberations. We didn't have many of those, which is great because maybe, the stats say that it's not high anyway. But we did go down very much wildlife versus dog through this process. So where we've landed, I'm really comfortable with. And I think I said at deliberations time is that I know that there'll be people on both sides of this debate in terms of conservation and dogs that will not be entirely happy with the decision. But the community had an absolute opportunity to be involved. It was in a process that was transparent, and I am also nervous that now we may deviate from all that work under some new information, some pressure and bits. So I'm happy to move the resolution.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. Moved Councillor Hill, seconded Councillor Murray. And I think the points that were made by both of you are really important. We have the option of hearing these as an entire council, or those who wish to be part of the deliberation process and hear the full suite of submissions, the obviously very passionate verbal presentations that were made to the committee get the benefit of the very rigorous staff advice that Councillor Hill referred to. And we've chosen to delegate that responsibility to a small committee of people who put themselves forward. And I'd just like to thank those people, because I'm sure, having heard a number of the comments and seen a number of the submissions, there are very passionately held views on both sides of the debate. Having made that decision to delegate the responsibility to a small group of councillors, I too am reluctant for the council then start second guessing in the absence of having been through all of that process, listen to the verbal submissions. So yeah, so again, thank you to everyone involved, including the staff, and for the reporting and information provided. Councillor Butler, then Councillor Greening.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I don't disagree with everything that has been said. Having said that, I would like to move an amendment, which I am which I am hopeful could be, with advice from staff, could be seen as a technical adjustment. And it's a technical adjustment because the area at the Parawhaka Oho, which is in the new dog bylaw, is prohibited in order to allow birds to nest and fledge without disturbance. It is from September to February. But the fact is that the variable oyster catchers, of which a third of the world population of variable oyster catchers lives in Tasman, these variable oyster catchers are the only birds which nest in this location. And because of existing disturbance, which would not be removed by the new bylaw, they often require to have a second clutch of eggs. And that means that they will need protection until March. I've distributed this picture of the existing signs, which are been erected with paid for by Tasman District Council and DOC and Forest and Bird. These signs are put up every nesting season in the Parawhaka Oho area and some other areas to protect the variable oyster catchers. There are 10 pairs nesting there at the moment. These signs have been put up for the last 3 years. So I'm just, my question to staff is, could this amount to a technical change to bring it into line with what is actually happening on the ground at the moment? And I think that, yes, ideally all this information should come in front of the hearings panel, but given that this is a new process to bring technical information about birds into the dog bylaw, it is inevitable that more information trickles in afterwards. And I'm just hoping that this can be seen as just a technical change to bring it into line with the existing situation. And I would say that finally is that the return of other birds which start to nest in September is very unlikely. The banded dotterels have left now, and the chances of them returning would be connected to a complete ban of dogs in that area. So that is extremely unlikely. So let's protect the birds that are already there.
Okay, thank you. Just one question before I come to staff for answer to the question about the technicalities. So was this all part of the hearing?
No, it was information that came out afterwards.
Just back the track back for a second. So, but as a sign has been going up for how long?
3 years.
Okay. Thanks for the clarification. Kat.
So what the staff have recommended for this particular location, first off, I will note that while it's prohibited just during a nesting season, it is on leash, what's proposed for the rest of it. So there is still some level of protection all year round for this particular site. What we've proposed currently aligns with a report, the MacArthur, Landfill and Shakard, a review of management issues and options for coastal birds in the Tasman district. This was commissioned by the council, and we consider that independent advice, and that was what informed the decision make, or what we recommended to the panel. So yeah, the current proposal aligns with that, and that report also highlights several other factors, including dogs there. Second clutches and delayed breeding season is often due to disturbance, and the proposed changes may reduce disturbance and therefore increase the likelihood of the first clutch being successful. The current proposal, that seasonal window also captures the breeding window of multiple species and not just focusing on the variable oyster catchers. There is that Matt may wish to weigh in on, maybe the banded dotterels may return following the bylaw changes. So we just want to be pragmatic about the recommendations that we're making.
Okay, so your recommendation is to stick with the recommendation which the panel adopted, which would mean these signs would need to change to September to February. Is that the? Oh, okay, so you don't need to change the signs because they don't refer to the actual ban. It just refers, so there will be different information on the advisory sign versus the bylaw per se. Okay, that's very clear. Thank you. So it's been moved. Is there a seconder?
Yes, thank you. I'm prepared to second this amendment. I mean, it does seem to me to be a minor technical change. To me, it does seem a bit odd that for 3 years we've been putting up signs highlighting an important season. It's just a month either way. So I'm happy to second the amendment.
I'll just come to Kip before I go any further. Councillor Green, are you on a similar topic or a different one?
Well, I can't speak to the current topic because I haven't seen any wording, but
Okay. The wording is up on the screen, so we'll get the screen shared with you. So you should have it now. And I'll come back to you in relation to this debate. Now we're talking about an amendment. Councillor Hill.
Thank you. Two things. Pari whakaoho, not para, so P-A-R-I. And is it a minor technical change?
Yeah, from a conservation and wildlife protection perspective, I appreciate that could be seen as a small change on one particular site. However, the bylaw covers the entire district, and considering the potential improvements that have been made at many other sites, personally, I wouldn't like to see this whole thing go through consultation to possibly roll back any improvements that have been made for something that can be flagged and monitored and potentially addressed in a review in 5 years' time. I also appreciate this information came out after the deliberations. I would just be wary of that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Shellcross.
Just firstly, obviously, this is the first time I've sat on anything like this, so I do appreciate the staff and working with the rest of the councillors on it was really a thorough process, and I feel like we did a really good job. My biggest concern is, like say, if we open up a can of worms, and if we do this, we're going to have other people coming going, oh, well, can we just tweak this, tweak that? So I'm pretty comfortable to leave it as it is, and it sounds like we've got a bit of a plan in place, so that's where I sit with it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Shellcross. Councillor Greening, do you wish to speak to the amendment?
Yeah, it went up very quickly and came down again. Can it go back up just so I can ask a question in relation to it? So I suppose my question really is, you're proposing to to shift from November, sorry, if you could put it up again, from November to March. Is that what you're proposing to change, the season change?
From September to February to
and I understand
November
the
to
original
March.
proposal was from September to February.
Correct.
Yeah, so we're going from 6 months, September to February, seasonal exclusion, to 5 months, November to March, seasonal exclusion. And we have, do we have compelling evidence that this is the case, or is this just someone saying this?
So we have Councillor Butler's perspective and view, and as the staff referred to in their answer, they have commissioned a report of experts in inverted commas, or appropriately qualified people, to provide the information, which is what the September to February is based on. So that is the information the hearing panel had, was that independently commissioned report of experts / qualified people. Councillor Butler has a different perspective in relation to the dates.
And there's no expert evidence supporting Councillor Butler's assertion council staff have received?
I will come to Councillor Butler in due course.
No, I'm asking staff, have they received any expert evidence that supports this change in period from 6 months to 5 months?
Councillor Butler. No, he's asking you.
Right.
No,
Okay.
I'm asking staff. Have staff received any evidence
I see what, yeah.
that supports the change from November to March?
Through the Mayor, we have. It's more been anecdotally based rather than through the chair.
Right. Okay. So it's anecdotal. Okay. Well, look, it's anecdotal. If we had received late evidence that was compelling, which expert evidence, then I would be inclined to support this, because we should be flexible enough to ensure that the overarching purpose of this is to mitigate loss to these birds. That's the whole point of these controls. If you haven't received that and we're just getting anecdotal evidence, then we are unfortunately left in a position of we've received other anecdotal evidence and we are ignoring that. So for the purposes of consistency, we have to be consistent.
I tend to agree, Councillor Granning. So I've got, thank you, Councillor Kinnemont and Councillor Ellis.
Thank you, through the Mayor. This is not the only site where these birds nest. Moutere Leisure Park is a well-known nesting area there, and dogs are frequently disturbing the nest and the eggs. So it's not only in that river mouth, but it's also probably Tasman wide, which opens up another, as Councillor Shellgrass says, another can of worms of the whole area, not just one area where this should happen. My dealings with the park staff over this, they're all very kind and very focused, but signage needs to happen at some of these spots as well as to assist any bylaw. So I'll just put that in there. The staff should consider not only this, but it's a regional wide issue, and there should be signage put up. So can you please consider that in your workings?
Thank you, Councillor Kinnemont. Councillor Butler. Oh, sorry, Councillor Ellis and Councillor Butler.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Just a comment and a question. I am a bit concerned about, we've gone through a process of extensive consultation. We've listened and read a massive amount of material during this process, and for everything that there have been changes throughout the process, and it's been as a result of the public have had the opportunity to have their say on this matter. And looking at this, I don't recall a lot being said about this, but can I check? So I am very cautious about changing any of the recommendations in this process. But can I please check? So I take it this is an information sign. It's not a in no way is there any regulation attached to it, and it's been going up for 3 years. So having a dog bylaw go through in the state that it's in, it doesn't stop the sign continuing to be going up and for people to be conscious of bird life in that area.
Through the chair, no, it doesn't. It is an information sign. It's more of an educational program rather than an enforcement program.
Are you aware if there have been any cases where under the Wildlife Act anyone's been charged with any damage to birds in this area in this time?
Through the chair, I don't know of any under the Wildlife Act or the Dog Control Act.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Butler, then Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment about the Nicky MacArthur report. My understanding of the purpose of that report was to survey the variety of the numbers and the spread of the different types of different species of birds in the Tasman coastal area. It was not designed to actually investigate the specific nesting patterns of a particular bird. So the variable oyster catcher does nest from September to February, that is correct, but it also needs to do a second clutch, which will take it through to March. So that detail was not part of the MacArthur report, and it was not intended to be. So there is research that done in Kaikoura, which shows that variable oyster catchers do a second clutch in Kaikoura. I can provide that to Councillor Greening if he likes.
Yeah, I think we're at risk of now relitigating the hearing process, bringing in more evidence. As I said right at the start, all of these issues could and should have been raised. I take it the sign wasn't brought up, but I presume the whole conversation around bird species in this location was had, and the committee arrived at a particular point. Like many processes, things come up later down the track, whether that's expert evidence or anything else. The process, everyone was aware of it. It was not a low profile process. It was very comprehensive. I feel very much like we're at risk of relitigating the evidence and the information, one very small part of it, about one very particular issue. And that I don't think is a particularly appropriate way to go about bylaw creation. So Councillor Mackenzie, and I don't know if Councillor Greening wishes to speak to the amendment, but then I'll look to put the amendment.
All right, thank you very much through the chair. I feel as though the question that we should just be asked, I mean, I totally get it in terms of process, and it would be good if we had all the information as part of it. But given that we've got some new information, I don't think it means that we should just sign off a bylaw which doesn't come up for review for 5 or 6 years. So I guess my question would be, through the chair, is, you know, is this considered a minor technical amendment, and what is the risk to the council of proceeding with this amendment?
Kia ora koutou, through the chair. It's not appropriate for me to comment specifically in an open forum, but I can talk generally around the risks that you'll have to consider when you look at an amendment like this. So, generally speaking, the further you get away from a standard consultation decision process, and the further you amend or change something that has gone through a process, the greater the risk is that the bylaw can be challenged. Whether this is a minor technical change is something that we can talk about potentially in public excluded if you think that is necessary. But I will suggest that you have in the back of your minds the people that may be affected by this change who haven't been emailing you as hearing panel members, who may have strong views around this change and may feel disenfranchised or feel that their natural justice has been breached by the change at this stage. As I say, I'm happy to go into further detail.
the fundamental point is there are other people who would also like to make minor technical amendments to half an hour here or half an hour there, or we've received that information. It's people have been lobbying for all sorts of minor technical changes. Once you entertain one, you kind of compelled to entertain all of the minor technical amendments that various people would like to make. So I think you can discuss or argue the technicalities, but fundamentally, is it appropriate that all suggested amendments, of which I'm aware other people may have other ones, once we go down the path of one, then you're opening it up to moving all sorts of other minor technical amendments in inverted commas. I very clearly caution against going down that path. It's been a comprehensive process. Everyone knew the timeframes. Everyone had the opportunity. The panel did its job comprehensively. The staff reporting was comprehensive. We have subsequently received a range of views about a range of amendments. I think once you open one up, if we entertain this one, I suspect we're going to go down the path of having to debate various others, and then we do run the risk of undermining the entire process. Councillor Greening, do you want to speak to the amendment again?
Just want to clarify, but also just given that Councillor Butler raised a question for me, I can respond to it. But we are then, after we've had this, going to engage on the bylaw more generally, because I haven't spoken to that.
Yes, I will come back to the bylaw in general, because we have spent
Fantastic.
the last 20
So,
minutes on the amendment.
So my concerns with this
I will come back to you.
process, with this particular amendment is with process. I appreciate that Councillor Butler is suggesting that she has evidence. I haven't had the opportunity to read it. I'm not sure if anyone else has. This really should have been circulated far earlier if it's compelling evidence and expert-based that staff could have digested and then come to support a technical amendment. But either they haven't received it or they don't accept it, I'm not too sure. And so, again, I feel that we need to be consistent.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Butler.
Thank you. I think given the feelings around the table, I think it's best that I withdraw the amendment. And I think it's unfortunate because, you know, our birds are under continuous threat, and if there's anyone's under any illusions that bird numbers are increasing, they are not. So I'm just hopeful that our new bylaw can go some way to protecting them. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So the amendment is withdrawn by the mover. I'll now come back to the debate about the bylaw in general. Councillor Kinnemont and then Councillor Greening.
Thank you. Through the Mayor, what is the process for protecting our pied oysters from dogs?
The bylaw.
What do we have to do to protect these birds from dog attacks? They do happen out there. It's a big wide world, and dogs are killing birds. So what is the process? Please, can the staff tell me what it is?
Through the chair, there's a process of enforcement and regulation, which we have patrols and stuff. We respond to reports. We obviously can't be everywhere all at once, but we do respond to every report of every attack, and we investigate all of them and respond appropriately under the Act.
Okay. There's a lady in Moutere called Raywin Wood. You're probably all very aware of her. Takes photographs every day of the birds, of the Pied Pipers. She has sent into the council photographs of dogs attacking animals, disturbing animals on their nests, and has had nothing that I'm aware of in response, apart from we can't get there because it's all happened. So this bylaw really doesn't give the birds any more protection, does it? It's the same old, same old. We ring up, someone from the council will come along and have a look to see what's left of the birds on the nest. We can't catch the people at the time, can we?
Through the chair, we can if we're there on the patrol. And if they're photographed in a breach of the bylaw in a prohibited area, not on a lead in a leaded area, there's paths we can go down. But a distant photo of a dog on a beach is hard to track down. We do investigate all of them, but it's whether we have enough evidence to do anything about it is another thing.
I guess, Councillor Kinnemont, that's like every law ever, from dogs and birds through to all the laws that involve physical violence against humans. The laws don't prevent the activities happening. It's just a fact of life. There is a limited ability to be everywhere all the time, all at once, in terms of enforcement. And the bylaw process is the process that sits in place, the rules and regulations. Council has options around its decisions around enforcement and funding, but that's the inevitable challenge of a big district with a massive coastline and all sorts of interactions that we can't possibly police day to day, everywhere, all the time. Councillor Greening.
Thank you. Through the chair, I have a few questions. First of all, can I just acknowledge the volume of material that is outside of this full council report, which we're directed to have a look at? There is quite a bit, and I did feel at the end of trying to digest all of that material that it would have been useful for the public who are probably looking at our full council agenda to at least have some form of summary in the lead up to it, rather than just replicating the resolutions from the deliberations hearing and then attaching the bylaw. But I did welcome, and thank you very much for staff for doing so, providing a summary of changes. And that's really what I think would have been quite useful. Reading the submissions, I mean, there was a clear tension, I think, between protection of endangered species and making sure that those species flourish, and that there is a balance with enabling people to also enjoy their lifestyle, but not endangering wildlife that might be endangered. And this came through a number of discussions, and also more broadly along little criteria, which appeared to be quite a conflicted and hotly debated area. So just generally, just so since we didn't really get a feel for it in the report, have we increased or decreased the restrictions on dogs from this bylaw change? And then second to that question is, in the spirit of education, which I think is very useful, can I suggest that we publish a table of the changes between the existing bylaw and the proposed, or what soon will be the probably passed bylaw, so that people can see for themselves whether there has been a diminution, a reduction in the ability for people to walk their dogs, and or not, because I think that would be very useful. And what I gathered from just the brief summary that was provided was that a lot of prohibitions have been removed, which would suggest that actually we're controls to allow flexibility between the competing interests.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Greening. There's two questions.
That question.
There are two questions there.
Through the chair, we don't
I've got a few more after that.
That's brilliant.
Through the chair, we don't have the exact numbers. We did provide those when the draft bylaw was adopted for consultation around the exact hectareage of increase or decrease of prohibited areas. Those stats were something that needed to be taken a little bit with a grain of salt as well, which I'll get to. Overall, the prohibited area had decreased, but site locations had increased. That's because we're sort of targeting particularly sensitive areas for prohibition. But we had actually lifted other areas that weren't so sensitive. For example, the Hope Recreation Reserve was one of the locations that under the previous bylaw was prohibited, and we've changed it to a controlled exercise area. Overall, controlled exercise areas have that hectareage has also increased as well, but there are just some particular locations that have been added in as well. And you are correct that the changes that we've made post the consultation are all more relaxations rather than incorrect. There are no new prohibitions that have been brought in as a result of the consultation.
Thank you. So in the spirit of education, it would be useful to have some form of summary that people can just quickly gaze across and see for themselves the output, because there was so much information, and the documents of, for a ratepayer to go through to come to that conclusion, I think would be quite extensive, and I think generally it would be quite useful. My other questions, I hope the chair will bear with me. Richmond has a new reserve, and I didn't see it being mentioned in restrictions, so I take it from that this new reserve on the switchbacks enables people who have dogs in Richmond to walk their dogs through that area.
Through the chair, sorry, which reserve was it? I didn't quite catch that.
Along the switchbacks, Richmond South, a newly acquired reserve.
It's not included in the bylaw, sorry, through the chair.
So does that mean that people can do as they please with their dogs in this reserve?
Through the chair, if it's not an urban areas are under the sort of catch-all of you must be on a leash in an urban area. However, if it's not considered that, then generally it's just the provisions of the Dog Control Act apply. So your dog still has to be under control, but no leash requirements as such.
Fantastic. I've got 4 questions, so this is number 3. I referred to clause 6.12 in an email earlier to you, just to preempt you. But it's just in relation, you've added through the deliberation process the word wildlife protection, and I think the rationale for it was consistent with the objectives. And I read through the objectives, and the objectives I saw were more along minimising risks as opposed to protecting, which sounds like a very high threshold compared to the objectives. So I'm just wondering whether you still hold to that, whether a technical amendment is required, given that perhaps we should be using consistent language with the objectives, which is rather than protection, maybe it should be minimising risks of wildlife loss or something like that.
For the chair, is there a proposed amendment like that?
Well, I'm suggesting, and I leave it to staff to enlighten me as to whether they think protection is outside the purposes outlined in clause 3, and specifically 3.8.
To there are some sites that have increased restrictions compared to others. There are some sites where we're advocating controlled exercise, so possibly on a balance it would be protected in some areas, minimized risk overall from dogs and recreation.
Yeah, so you've used the word wildlife protection.
Next question.
Well, I'm just answering. I'm looking for an answer that didn't really answer.
Well, you got an answer. The answer is the staff are comfortable with where it sits currently. That's the answer.
Okay. I think it might go beyond the objectives, but anyway, we'll leave that for someone else.
That's why if you wanted to be on the hearing panel, you could have put your hand up and gone
No,
through the
I
whole
don't need
process.
to be on the appeal panel. I'm just asking the questions here. It's my right as a councillor. Just in terms of resolution 9, I again raise the concern that council's under financial pressure. Why would we reduce the fees for working dogs, which are themselves, the fees are tax deductible? So the real cost to the person paying those fees is effectively 66% of the fee that is actually charged, but increase dog fees for everyone else. When the cost of this bylaw, I would have thought would applies to all dogs. So I do think that resolution 9 is not required. They are already discounted. They don't need to be discounted any further.
Where's resolution 9? Okay, so that's the clarification. So it's not that was part of the resolutions that the hearing panel passed, which will come up for debate at council next time we consider the fees and charges schedule. It is not subject to the council resolution that we're currently debating.
Okay, so I just want to make it clear that we are not adding that because
Thanks.
we are approving the deliberations. That's all.
No, we are not.
Fantastic. Thank you. Then I have no further questions. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Right. The resolution has been moved and seconded some time ago. Councillor Hill, would you like a right of reply?
Why not?
Oh, Councillor Harry, Councillor Dowler.
2 quick ones. 7(1)(2), under set fees and charges. It says determine registration fees based on the size of the property where the dog resides.
Yeah, it's current.
I didn't remember that. That's
over
Yeah.
okay. No, that's number of dogs, not. It's not setting the fee.
No, both.
So it says this is the set fees and charges.
Rural dogs, urban dogs.
And if you're under a hectare, you pay.
Okay, no, that's fine. Number 2 is on the map of the Motueka sand spit. I'm just wondering, has that line in the sand been moved further north, or is it where it was in the last bylaw that we set?
Through the chair, I understand it's been adjusted slightly, but it hasn't encroached onto that northern end of it. It was more to adjust for the moving of the sand spit itself that the amendments were made, but it hasn't moved further north. And Doc provided us with a little bit of some better clarity in how we could describe that particular point. So that's been adjusted. So they've given us a latitude marker rather than the very wordy description that was in the previous bylaw, just to try.
Yeah, I was just worried that it's gone further north because the sand spit's grown twice the size south. So anyway, that's pretty much it. And I'd just like to thank the panel and everybody involved, because I was involved in the first round years ago, and I know what we went through then. But you guys have done twice as much now what we did back in the day. So well done. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to echo that. I mean, the last 40 minutes demonstrates that I know how they got to a conclusion on the whole rest of it. Yeah, Councillor Hill, your right of reply.
Thank you, Chair. I think some really good points have been made around. So what do we do to help people understand how to offer protection to the birds? And we can have the bylaw, which is good, and I am pleased that we're going to uphold where we landed today. I think that's really important. But I think our regulatory approach generally always has an educational aspect at the fore, and I know that we'll continue to do that. And I hope that in our communities where there's been some discontent or tension, or we've felt like we've needed to sort of go at a bit of a battle about these areas, that there is there's been some giving and taking, but ultimately that where there is wildlife, it is protection, and people do understand further how to keep an eye on their dog. And interesting, actually, RNZ Today has got an article on dog attacks generally through New Zealand, which I had a little listen to on the way over. And one of the things, this person came on and shared some suggestions about if it seemed like a dog was, going to come at you maybe. She had some suggestions for people, including if you're on your bike, get off your bike and put it between and carry an umbrella and put the umbrella up. Anyway, I found that all probably helpful, but it seemed a little odd too. But I think in terms of one of the main things she said was, if you're walking your dog, don't be on your phone. And I thought that was so interesting. So how quickly a dog can just race up to a nest. So I think what I'm looking for is that over time that we just, as a district, increase our ability to understand how to manage along. There are dogs, there are birds, there are kids, and let's find a way to manage it and not have to be an either or situation. And our media that goes out after this, I think, can speak to that. But also, I think the business about the hectareage, like the sort of overall increase or the whatever, I'm sure we'll capture that in our media. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I will put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Would you like your vote recorded? Yes, was the answer. Yeah. Okay, thank you. So now I am going to, given we have a couple members of the public here waiting for our debate about another issue, so I'm going to bring forward the discussion around the Upper Moutere shared path funding. Jamie, thank you for your patience. I anticipated we might get you slightly quicker, but we did not. So I will come across to you. So that is on page 289, item 7.7. Jamie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good morning, councillors. I'm happy to take the report as read. The only one thing I'll add that wasn't in the report is sort of subsequent discussions with the Nelson Tasman Cycle Trails Trust enlightened us to the fact that this proposed path will also form a part of a safe link between the existing Great Taste Trail near Mapua and the Upper Moutere village. So just kind of adds to the overall size, scale, and value of our Great Taste Trail. So with that, I'll happy to take any questions.
Oh, Councillor McKenzie.
Oh, you're cheeky, Mr. Mayor. Through you. Firstly, Jamie, thank you for writing the report and bringing this item back. I know that was, kind of awkward for you, so appreciate that. I also would just like to acknowledge Nathan and his other community members there in the public forum. Thank you, Nathan, for your role as chair of the Community Association and your advocacy for your community. I mean, as we know, there was a previous decision made by the council which resulted in this important project having to be delayed. That was because we didn't get the funding that we had anticipated from Waka Kotahi for these particular types of projects. I think it was an unfortunate consequence that this one was put on hold, and revisiting it is absolutely the right thing to do. I mean, as councillors sitting around this table, of course we need to understand the financial consequences of decisions that we make, and this does have a very, very minor financial consequence, but we also need to understand the impacts of our decisions on the community, and we really need to understand the aspirations of the community and the health and safety. So I personally, I just think this is such an obvious thing that we should do for the community, and I would encourage all councillors to support proceeding with this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McKenzie. Councillor Hill. So I've got Councillor Hill, Councillor Greening, Councillor Kinnemont, Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Chair. So in terms of, while not materially affecting the council's debt or rates projections across the first 2 years of the LTP, what is the actual financial impact of bringing this forward, please?
I don't have the exact figure. I mean, someone from the finance team might be able to explain the implications, but effectively bringing forward the $188,951 from next financial year to this financial year will slightly increase the council's net debt position, so we'll be incurring interest on that amount of money for one extra year. Yeah, I won't try and do the maths off the top of my head, but I mean, one reason that staff were relatively comfortable bringing this report back was that subsequent to the decision that was made at the 24th of October council meeting not to top up the missing NZTA funding, subsequent to that decision, there was a different report where the council deferred another net $7 million worth of capital work from this year to next year. So bringing back 188,000 of that 7 million still leaves the council better in a better financial position at the end of this year than it would otherwise have been.
Mike, would you like to add to Jamie's eloquent financial explanation?
Yeah, the cost for the interest and principal for a full year is about $20,000. So it does impact budgets, but it has a minor impact.
Thank you. I'll be supporting the resolution, and I think this is one of these projects and small community that's been there languishing for quite a while, trying to find a resolution to it. And given the very minor, in our world, minor financial impact, I'm certainly happy to support getting it done and getting it realised. I think will be very important. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Walker indicated she was willing to second. I'll come back to you in terms of the speaking order. I've got Councillor Greening and then Councillor Kinnemont.
Thank you. I generally say my question has been answered, but I just in response to Mike's last comment about it being a minor impact, I'm just trying to understand, given what Jamie just said, which is we deferred 7 million and we're clawing back 188, why there's a minor impact.
I mean, the minor impact is the fact that 7 million plus 180,000 is slightly more deferred than 7 million minus 180,000.
So I would have thought it'd be, yeah. Thanks, Mike.
Sorry, that number I gave councillors is the cost of the $188,000 being brought forward, not the cost of 7 million. So that cost of the 188,000 is minor.
Yeah. So I take it that the changes with the 7 million, the net position is we are better off. Well, how do I put this in? Better off. It's going to be a financial timing issue.
We're not quite as much better off as we would have been had we deferred all of them.
Yeah.
But we're only slightly less better off.
All good. Thank you.
Righto. Brilliant. Councillor Kinnemont, then Councillor Walker, then Councillor Shellgrass.
Thank you, through the Mayor. I echo Councillor McKenzie's and Councillor Hill's comments here and will thoroughly support it. I'd also remind the councillors that this has been a long-standing issue, and a certain councillor, Anne Turley, has had a lot of effort put in over the years with this, and one of her parting comments to me was, make sure we get it over the line. So I'm very, very pleased. And also, as an advisory member of the Moutere Hills Community Centre, they welcome this. It's been a long time to get this over the line, and it's a community not only for Nathan and everybody else, but it's also for our young Tamariki who can go from the school and play the sport at the Community Hills Centre safely. And I thoroughly recommend that the councillors here support this recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Walker.
Yeah, thank you, through you, Mayor. Obviously, I put my name forward before to second this. I want to acknowledge the amount of work and effort that the Upper Moutere community have actually put in themselves. So this isn't just them coming to us wanting us to do something. They've had shovels in the ground, rightfully or wrongfully, all the way along in this process. I guess one of the things that I need assurance from our staff is we made a decision when we lost the funding. We're now revisiting it, and like I said, I'm really happy. I think that the kids' safety, everybody's safety in that area, comes at a big cost, and the cost of finishing this project isn't as large as the cost of somebody's life. But the messaging to the wider community is this pathway sat there. We've got so far. We committed to doing it. We pulled back for a period. We pushed the pause. We're now going to complete it. Where does that leave the rest of our community and our messaging? And I think that's the important part around today's conversation is we're going to put that path through. We went so far. We paused. We're going to redo it. But the next group that comes along, we probably are going to have to say no to because we don't have the funding. So I guess the messaging for me is really important. What is the message out to the rest of our community? But yeah, well done team for continuous with your patience through this incredibly long journey.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Shellgrass.
Yeah, I'm definitely keen to support it. Obviously met up with Nathan and his crew the other day. My biggest thing through this is I sort of feel like I've missed the boat a wee bit, letting that slip through. And Christine's had a lot, put a lot of good work into this. And I think I've learned from the process that it's always good to just, if you're unsure, just push a bit harder. So I'm glad it's going through, and I've got a really engaged community. And for me, it was a learning curve with this funding. How important we should have just done a bit earlier, but that's on me. So, but just happy to support it.
Thank you. So it's been moved and seconded. So again, this is one of those nice to do things, and I support the resolution. Coming back to Councillor Walker's point, leading up to this is going to be a phenomenally challenging 6 months. I know I keep saying it's going to get more challenging, or it's going to be challenging, or it's very challenging, and the LTP was challenging. Everything is that is not a bad way of putting it about getting real. Changes at central government level, changes around funding, recent announcements around levies, recent about reductions in other funding, public transport funding, interest rates, insurance. Everything is going to become, there is going to be some very tough decisions. It's nice to make this decision. It is minor in the grand scheme of things, but it's a lot of little minor things that ultimately add up. And so, taking Councillor Walker's point, it's very clear that while we've changed tack on this particular project, I understand the reasons why. I support the resolution, and it has been a long-standing project that, without the reduction in NZT, we would have proceeded with in this year. It shouldn't send a message that we can just change our mind at the drop of a hat because, other people see this as a chance to come in and lobby for a further change, because that is absolutely not going to be the financial situation and reality facing the council in the next annual plan process. So with that, I will come to Councillor Mackenzie for a right of reply and then put the resolution.
Thank you very much, through you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, I think for the community, there's a package of things that the community would like to achieve. This is one footpath. There are others. There are some issues, I think, we know around speed limits coming through the village and on that road in general. And so over time, we have tried desperately hard with respect to the speed limits, and we'll continue to try to achieve a safer environment there for your community. So really pleased to see the support, and looking forward to walking down that pathway.
Okay, thank you. I'll put the resolution. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Right, we'll now break very briefly, grab a cup of tea, and then we'll come back at 10:02. Next item is Saxton Field Activity Management Plan, Rob and Grant.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We'll take the report as read, and we're happy to take any questions on this.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to move the report in terms of this. I guess just a little bit of commentary on terms of what some of the discussions we've had at the Saxton Joint Committee meeting is that you would have seen somewhere there's some discussions around a media tower for cricket again. And that discussion we had was around repurposing Harakiki or something, but certainly Councillor Ellis and I have been really strong in saying there is no money outside the LTP. So what you have in front of you is the asset management plan. If there is some slight tweaks, the tweaks we understand will be made within existing budgets, but happy to move the activity management plan.
Okay, thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Ellis, and other speakers, Councillor Greening, and then Councillor Dowler.
Yeah, just a question in relation to an issue that was raised some time ago at council around accessibility playgrounds and the ambition to include it into the Saxton Field area. I'm just noting that there doesn't seem to be any place recorded on the map provided in that plan for such a playground. So I'm just wondering, is it in or isn't it in? And do Richmond councillors need to contemplate using RFCs for such a playground outside of Saxton Field?
Rob Grant.
Through the chair, I can confirm it is in. We're in discussions. We've identified an area in the corner of Champion Green at the back of the Gowing College as a suitable location. And
So,
nice and simple. Thank you.
Yeah. So, will there be an updated diagram then, because it's not recorded in that diagram?
Apparently, people are saying it is.
I couldn't see it anywhere on that diagram.
Page 205. Page 205. Pink blob.
Pink blob. Right. Okay, I'll look at it again for the pink blob, and it's described as the playground, is it?
I presume it is.
Staff are looking. I'm waiting for a response.
Can someone just say yes, please? Grant.
Looks good. I can see Councillor Maru's screen. And
so yes,
that's right. So
blob.
It's different numbering to what we have here.
Is that that's the regional something park, is it?
Mutual inclusive playground.
Just to clarify, it's on the map.
Okay, if you could send me a copy of that, or perhaps circled, because I really have a hard time seeing where it is.
Okay, all good. Moving on. Yes, it's there.
Thank you.
Anything further? Councillor Dallin.
Yeah, I'll go back to our situation with the Tasman District Council as well, but on page 183, it talks about the sea level rise, and this is the bit that's starting to get under my skin a bit. It makes a statement there that fortunately there is not predicted to be any direct flooding impacts on Saxton Field, even with 1 metre of sea level rise. Well, we keep talking about 1.5 metres here to the fact of 2.5 metres in 130 years now, sometimes in this room. So I'm not worried about it because it's in this report, but where's our consistency for 500 metres away with what we're dealing with here inside this building compared to what's stated?
No. Well, Grant, at least we have an answer.
I mean, this is probably obvious to everyone, but it is within the Nelson City boundaries, so it'll be following
sea level
their
rise
policy.
is different in
And
honestly, no, I'm not kidding you.
There's the retraction and their plan change 29 or something. We've got to revisit all that or something.
One of the questions we've asked in various other forums relating to planning is there a consistent approach to the application of the guidelines around sea level rise? I will leave you to come to the conclusion. Join the club. That is Councillor Dakey.
Yeah, just thank you. Through the mayor, just comment. Just want to thank the committee members from Tasman and Nelson. Staff do a great job, and Chair Derek Shaw has done a great job of popping on to a couple of meetings. And it's a fantastic example of two councils working together and making the machine work. And it's a great outcome. And this plan reflects what an asset this place is for the region. So very happy.
Yeah, I'd echo Councillor Dakey's comments. So with that, I will put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Next up, we have the Motueka Harbour and Coastal Works Reserve Fund, Richard Kirby.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This has been round the traps a couple of times, and I think we've got it lined up now to be adopted. Got no further comments to make.
Thank you. I will open up for questions or moving or seconding. Motueka councillors. Oh, I get the impression this could be another one of those conversations. Motueka, here we go. Happy days. Anyone want to start for 10? Oh, there's not a great deal of enthusiasm, Richard. I'm sensing your optimism of having it adopted quickly is waning already. Councillor Murray. Happy to move. Thank you, Councillor Murray. Is there a second? Councillor Kinnemore. It's open for, it has been moved and seconded. It is open for any questions, comments or feedback. In the absence of any, I will move to put the resolution. Those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. That was interesting. Oh yeah. Somehow, although I should feel happy, I feel nervous. Wasn't a glowing endorsement. Right, amendment to the bill. Well, because they got so used to things taking ages, they all decided that their agenda's like 5 items down the thing. Who do we have?
David, no.
No.
Leith.
Amendments to delegations. 353.
Okay, so take the report as read. It sets out a number of new delegations and hopefully provides a clarity sought at the last council meeting where we talked about delegations or what was signed up previously.
Thank you, Lee. Councillor Greening. Who's going to move?
So no, I'm not going to move because I don't think I've been satisfactorily answered. But my concern is at the last debate where we saw the new migrated, for want of a better word, delegations register into the new system. In one of the schedules, because it had all been moved over into the new schedule system, everything was track changes. And the issue with that was we couldn't identify what words had been copied and pasted across and what words had actually changed. And I still haven't seen something that shows that particular schedule, what was pasted over and were there any changes, or was it all pasted over and there were no wording changes? And that clarity still isn't there. And I haven't seen a track changes version that would show me the difference between what was pasted over and what has actually changed.
Please.
Through the chair, do you get the clarity you need from the report that talks about the changes that were made at the previous council?
No. So I was after to see if, because it was mentioned in that discussion earlier on that there may have been some wording changes, but we couldn't see those wording changes because everything was track changed because it also included the copying and pasting of words into the new schedule. So it would be useful to see what has been copied across from the previous delegation system and where, if any, there are wording changes made in there. So I know you've forwarded me a copy of the same document again with everything track changed on, but the point was for us to see if there had been any wording changes to the copy and paste across to the new schedule. And I haven't seen that. And that just requires a simple document which tracks the real changes as opposed to just the pasted over changes. And I thought that request had been made pretty clear last time.
Please. Through the chair, perhaps as a way of moving this conversation forward, I could arrange a meeting with you, Councillor Greening, and try and work out exactly what I can do to assist you with this one.
Yeah, so all I need, and I'll say it again, is rather than just giving me a document that has the entire schedule with track changes on, you need to highlight in that revised schedule what words have actually changed as opposed just to being pasted across and being shown as changed.
Through the chair, do you mean the way that each individual section has been articulated, or
so
because the power
so in one
is
of the schedules,
the section?
Yeah. So in one of the schedules, it has everything changed because it was pasted into a new type of schedule because of the way that the new system operated. But in the discussion, it was suggested that there weren't many actual wording changes and most of it had been just pasted across. But because it went to a new system, it was all shown as track changes. So I just need to see which words were changed.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll take that feedback on board.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Greening, Councillor Mackenzie, Councillor Murray.
Thank you very much through the chair. I'm happy to move the resolution.
Thank you. Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one question, and it relates to page 370, please. So with the Soil and Conservation River Control Act coming out of the Operations Committee delegation, and it's going to Group Manager Environment and Science, will that now report through to Regulatory and Environment and not Operations? How does that?
Through the chair, I understand order he does.
Happy to second.
Okay, thank you. It's been moved and seconded. If there's nothing further, I'll put the resolution. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. And Councillor Greening, I think Leith indicated he's happy to sit down with you and work out what he needs to provide in terms of information next time you're in the office.
I'm only voting against because I wasn't satisfied with the clarifications that were provided. Thank you.
Okay, next up, we will come back to who wants to go first? Traffic control bylaw. Mike and Jamie. Mike.
I'm happy to take the report as tabled previously. It's noting that a clause has been added which notes that the parking within Dex Reserve, including any class restricted or time restricted parking, is not available during the Motueka Sunday market. The Motueka Sunday market limited occupies the space with a license to occupy, which is currently being renewed. The decision in this report has no impact on the market parking or parking availability during the market.
Okay, so this is the issue that arose last time that this came, that was raised by Motueka councillors. So now that that's been addressed, is someone prepared to move the resolution? Move Deputy Mayor Bryan. Is there a seconder? Councillor Mackenzie. Any further feedback? Oh, Councillor Greening.
I'm sorry, just a point of clarification. Is there an amendment to the resolution, or is there amendments that are not currently present in the document we've read?
It was just an amendment to the resolution.
If so, can they be put up on screen, just so that I've got a visible record?
So the resolution is not changed.
Right.
The amendments refer to the change. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, so there's no change to what you can see in terms of the resolutions. It's moved and seconded as it says. The changes were the bits relating to the comment that Mike just made around Dex Reserve and parking.
So there will be wording changes in the document. That's what you're saying?
Not from the document you've now seen, but from the previous document.
Right. So so the document I've got in front of me in the agenda has all the words as indicated in the presentation. Right.
Correct. Yes. Yes, that's the other way of. Yes. Okay. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against. Carried. Thank you. Speed management consultation. Bill, Jane, Dwayne. So 242. Oh, you leading?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, happy to take that report as read. There are a couple of items in there that we said we would update council on at this meeting, so I'll just provide that update. The first was funding, and it has been announced by NZTA that there is some funding available for implementation of the speed limit setting rule. We have to apply for that, and It is then assessed against the investment prioritisation method. So there is currently no guarantee as to how much will be available, but there may be some funding, and we will find out more once we apply, and it is assessed at the end of February, beginning of March. The second issue was NZTA's benefit cost tool, and that tool has been used to prepare the benefit cost disclosure statements included in attachment 2. As we have used it, it's come to our attention that it has some glitches in it, and we are working with NZTA to sort those out at the moment. It would appear that we will probably have to redo that bit of work, which is probably a couple of days' work, and it may actually be more extensive than that. But we're working with NZTA at the moment to try and sort that out. So that may also then delay the consultation timing as well, depending on how long it takes us to go through that process. And we have also provided an updated table for attachment 2 that's been provided yesterday, I think. So happy to take questions.
Okay, thanks, Bill. Councillor Mackenzie, then Deputy Mayor Bryant.
Thank you, through the chair. So could I just be clear about what you have written in your report, Bill? So as we know, we did the whole process, we consulted, we effectively did our speed management plan, we had it approved by Waka Kotahi, and then suddenly the rules changed, and now we've had to actually go back and do a whole lot more work, which includes a cost benefit disclosure statement using the tool that has been provided by Waka Kotahi for that very purpose. And you're now telling me that this tool is not fit for purpose because it's got errors in it. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, through the chair, that pretty well sums it up, yes.
Well, gosh, what an appalling situation that is. And so we've got further delays then. Thank you. Further delays and cost. Good point, Mr. Mayor.
I think there's a reason it's called a tool. Sorry, Councillor. Deputy Mayor Bryant, then Councillor Dowell, then Councillor Shelcroft.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is, it continues to be a frustrating process that just continues giving problems and challenges. All we really want to be able to do is get speed limits set on roads and get some signs up. But this is just turning into a nightmare. But I guess the only thing we have to really approve these resolutions to continue on the process and in the hope that one day we will get there. Now looks like it'll be 2026 and beyond. So that's another 12 months away. So extremely frustrating. Has anyone moved it?
Not yet.
I'm happy to move and take the flag.
Okay.
I'm not happy, but we have to carry on.
Deputy Mayor Bryant has moved. Is there a second? I've got a list of people to speak. Councillor Butler's happy to second. Well, is seconding. So I have Councillor Dowler, Councillor Kinnermont, Councillor Ellis.
Okay, sorry guys, but I'm going to bang on this one again. 2.2 on page 242. It is recommended that static variable speed limit signs will be used outside all other schools except for Appleby School, where electronic variable speed limit signs will be used as high speeds are likely. Well, that's got an 80k speed limit. We have an Moutere school sitting up there that has 100k speed limit. So I think that's probably a higher speed that they're probably going to be vulnerable to. So I'd really, really like to see that the Moutere school was not ignored, please.
Through the chair, the proposal is to reduce the base speed limit outside Ngāti Moti to 60 k's, which we need to consult on before we do that. Whereas we don't need to consult on the variable speed limits outside the schools. So we are going through the process of consulting on 60 Ks outside Ngāti Moti as part of this process. And there will be a decision on that comes a little later.
So well, we technically had already decided this.
Yeah.
Previously through the previous process. Now we're reconsulting on what we'd already decided because of the change to the thing, which involves the use of the tool. And so we're anticipating getting to a similar spot. So I take it that the suggestion is we don't want to spend the extra on the electronic variable sign when we're going to change, when we might possibly after consultation and time and cost, change the speed limit outside Ngāti Moti back to 60, which is what we'd already decided to do. Do you follow that? I know it seems entirely stupid. I completely agree with you,
but we've got to get the speed limit outside of schools done by 2025.
Yeah, but we don't.
The other stuff might not happen in 2026.
Correct, but we don't need to put the more expensive signs in areas where. And I know there's a stupid timing that's now resulted because of the ask about face where we're being expected to do this now. Because it would make much more sense to drop the speed limit to 60, put in the sign that as suggested, but as there is now going to be an interim period where we have the sign and the speed limit remains at 100, which is just a classic example of what this is such a load of shit.
Worse than that, Mr. Mayor, but I'm not allowed to.
Okay, Councillor Kinnemont.
Thank you. Through the chair. As per your attachment here, you've got the schools, the variable speed limits around schools in the category, and you've got 14 schools in category 1. Have you got a priority list of category 1s? That this is the worst school, this is the one that's 14th school?
We haven't categorised them because the timing for those would be all done at the same time.
No, I was thinking you've got 14 schools in a box called category 1. Have you got a number of schools that you'd like to get onto first as opposed to last in that category? I'm trying to find out, each you've got a category, but which ones are going to receive priority?
Well, they're all done at once.
They're all going to be done at once.
So they're all priority A1. Top. There's just a flat, all prioritised. All done at once.
Thank you.
Councillor Ellis and Councillor Walker.
This is so frustrating, and I agree with the sentiments of Councillor Dowler and the Mayor. Just to keep having to reiterate this issue, and it's embarrassing. I am so embarrassed that if we come across the students from Ngāti Moti School and Upper Moutere School, you know, we talk about wanting to have young people engaged in government and, you know, local issues. And here is a whole group of children that would be throwing their hands in the air. And I'm frustrated that we can't make these roads safe for our children. And the other frustration I have is that we've consulted already on this. Our community was extremely engaged in the process of that consultation. And here we are, we're going to have to go out to them again. Is there any way, because what I'm concerned about is whatever the timing winds up being for this consultation, that members of the community are going to think, oh, I've already put my 2 cents into this, and may not re-add it again thinking that they've put into this process. So is there any way that we can take the feedback that we've had in previous consultations and carry that intent forward, or is the community going to have to redo all the work that they've already done?
That is an excellent question. So effectively, can we consider all the previous submissions that were made on all the same locations and just transfer them across and count them as submissions to the new process to save people at least save them the hassle and the time, despite the fact that we have to go through the hassle and the time?
the way I view this process is actually implementing the speed management plan you've already agreed to. And this is some necessary steps that we need to go through to give effect to it. I think in terms of communicating to folk out there that their feedback from that process is already given into account, and the fact that these are the proposals that we're consulting on. So the starting point takes all of that on board. So and I guess subject to the process that occurs, we would think there'd have to be a darn good reason for changing any of these proposals in terms of staff recommendations back to the council before making any changes. Yep, I accept that it's frustrating. It's extremely frustrating. And in terms of the process we're proposing, we're actually trying to do the minimum required by the rules and regulations to get to the point that we've really landed.
Okay, thank you. Are you?
Just one more question. So the Regional Transport Committee has sent a letter to the Minister requesting that we have some sort of dispensation and can actually move forward the changes that we did have authorised by NZTA. I don't hold out a lot of hope, but should that come back, does that mean that this process can stop and we can just implement?
It's through the chair. I'm assuming that if the Minister does give us a waiver of doing it, we can start that process. But I don't hold a great deal of hope that he will.
Thank you.
Councillor Walker.
Yeah, thank you, through Mayor. Councillor Ellis has probably phrased part of my question, but first of all, acknowledging what Councillor Dowler has shared. So if by some chance that the new process gets tossed out, derailed yet again, will there be an opportunity? So if Ngātamotu School speed doesn't change because of whatever happens, powers beyond what we sit and control, will there be an opportunity to revisit what sign goes outside Ngātamotu School, or if what we put in today is in concrete, literally, and can't be changed? First question.
It's through the chair. Once the sign is in place, we'll be doing some monitoring of speeds in there, and then look at what we can do to reduce the speeds. Now, whether that is an electronic sign or whether it is some traffic calming, we would then look at depending on what the speeds look like once it's in there. I can't see the process being thrown out, but I have been surprised by the process before. So I think that if something like that happens, we would have to come back and revisit how we approach it.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you. And my second point, I mean, this is really absolutely ridiculous, and it's nonsensical what we've been through, and that's good word, eh? Nonsensical makes no sense. This is the Councillor Walker's new dictionary. So what you're saying to me, and I may be hearing this wrong, but we're going to put a sign up and revisit and do some obs and check out what it might look like. So for me sitting here, I go, you've had feedback from our community. They've made it clear what they need to keep themselves safe. So the data we've collected by going out really hasn't got any value. So do we value the data that we've got, or are we going to go out and recreate another survey, reconsult from a blank canvas, or are we going to put weight onto what we've heard? And if we were going to do that, surely you'd be putting the correct sign in straight up.
So just to be clear, the rule now requires 30-kilometre speed limits outside schools for specified times, which was largely consistent with the feedback we got from the schools and such like, including Ngāti Moti. What we're trying to do as part of this process is determine what kind of speed sign goes in the first instance, so that we basically we do it cost effectively. So we're proposing a static 30-kilometre speed sign in the first instance in most places and monitor that, and then if needed put in either works or an electronic speed sign. The speed limit is the same either way. It's about literally the kind of sign that you have up. In addition to that, we're trying to change the background speed limits so that there's a lower speed limit in front of these schools all the time. All of that is consistent with the feedback we've had.
Okay. And we're now just trapped in this situation where the timing is mismatched and hence it all looks odd. Councillor Shellcrest.
Yeah, mine was just on the cost of this. I think I asked this question last time to Bill, was how much did that speed management plan cost, just ballpark? Because I think that's really important if we've got to do it all again. So just not right now, but I'd still like to have that information. I think it would probably shock us, I think, how much it would have been. So, because I saw how much work the team put into it. So if I could have that number at some point, that'd be great.
Yep, provide that.
Thank you. Is there anything further? I guess the one option we have is to put up the signs anyway, put up the 60k signs, exactly where we anticipated them going in the first place, and it's just not an enforceable speed limit, but it still gives people it's not illegal to put up a sign, is it? I mean, we're not breaking any law by having a sign that's effectively just information only, and it just coincidentally happens to be at a similar place to the one we're consulting on. And
I'm not sure of the legality of that without doing a little bit more research in terms of.
I'm just suggesting a pragmatic way forward that you can send a signal to the motorist. Yeah. Mr. Plod doesn't have the ability to enforce it, but it's not there at the moment.
Through the chair, I strongly suspect
it would just be an informational sign.
There is a whole bunch of amazing regulations around the signage you're allowed to put up. So I take Bill's point without doing a bit of further digging. We couldn't give you the specific thing that we'd be contravening, but I'm pretty confident that we would probably be breaking some rule somewhere or regulation somewhere by doing so.
Oh, that was worth a try. Okay. With that, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, team, for your ongoing work in this regard, which you may have anticipated would have finished by now, but has not. Waste minimisation plan, David. And Mark from Nelson City. Welcome. Over to you, David.
Good morning, councillors. I'm happy to take the report as read, but just an update from Nelson City Council. Nelson City Council considered this equivalent report last week and passed the resolutions. There was some discussion on how the final plan should be approved by the councils and asked us to explore a joint committee of councils to approve the plan. What that would practically mean would be changing a delegation, which is reasonably straightforward, but probably the more challenging thing would be finding a date, which would be a July date for a joint committee of the council. So happy to receive feedback on whether you'd like us to explore that or not, and happy to take questions.
Okay, so it's open for questions. I mean, if there was an available date, it does tend to make more sense just to do it collectively than try and do it twice. But I take your point around dates and timing. Councillor McKenzie.
Thank you very much through the chair. Thank you, David and Mark, and I guess maybe Karen as well, for the substantial body of work that you've led, and just acknowledge the other councillors who have sat on that committee. Councillor Maru and Councillor Dakey. I think we've had some good chats and good contributions and work through it, and so I think it's time to hear from the public about what they think. It's a really important area of work, actually, for communities and for the council. So I'm happy to move the resolution.
Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie. Is there a second, Deputy Mayor Bryant?
Yeah, I'm happy to second. Just a question to David, just in relation to the changes to the waste minimisation levy that the government signalled, will they make any difference to the proposed plan or have any effect here at all?
So through the chair, just a background on that change. There was advice from Treasury to Cabinet at the last budget recommending that the government look at the use of the local government share of the waste levy. So yes, if that changed, then except for recycling, all of our waste minimisation activities are funded by that levy. So historically, it's been around 200,000. It's now sitting at about 1.1 for this financial year. So if that changed, it would substantially change the amount of work we could do in the waste minimisation space.
Is it the indication that they're going to do that at some stage, but we haven't got a confirmed date yet?
We don't have any knowledge of whether it's proposed or not.
So we can.
Oh, it's definitely being discussed.
Yes, yeah.
Well, I don't know where or how, but it's definitely floating around.
Yeah.
So, and it's effectively $500,000 for us. So, I think we best at least bear it in mind as we go through the process in terms of our ability, coming back to the point that was made earlier about passing things, whether they're policies or bylaws, and then implementing them is the whole next step. And that is where often costs, in this case, they're not insignificant. So, yeah, we just need to, I guess we need to be aware, but also as it becomes a more public conversation, everyone else who's submitting needs to be aware our ability to implement some of these things will be impacted by that.
If I might, we've tried to make it clear in the document that the LTP is where the funding decisions are made, and this is a strategy and objectives document.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
So going forward, there's going to be no immediate impact anyway by the sound of it around this change that the government's promoting, for the want of a better word. And just like to thank the committee for the work they've done, having done this in the past. I know there's quite a lot of work involved in doing this joint waste change. And I guess there's a requirement to do it again in the future, it seems.
Thank you. Councillor Graney.
Now, in terms of the question about joint committee, my prior experience with joint committee is if we're operating under Nelson Council's standing orders, the ability to be agile and make changes is very constrained. And I wouldn't favour operating under those standing orders.
That is an acute observation, Councillor Greening. A very pointed observation indeed.
Absolutely. So, so I would suggest that we may want to maintain our agility without knowing which standing orders we're operating under, and have the ability to control our own destiny rather than be operating like lemmings and rubber stamping whatever's put in front of us under Nelson Council standing orders.
We're not, so just correct me that you raised that, but that's not included in the resolution, is it? So I completely take your point, Councillor Greening. While the concept of joint council decision making is a good one, some of the practicalities and it presents some challenges, but we're not deciding that today. So we can have that conversation at some point. But I definitely note your points. Right. Anything further? If not, I'll put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. Mr. Kirby, Richmond Library Building Strengthening and Repair Requirements. 372.
Take the report as read, Mr. Chairman. It's me.
Thank you. It is open for Councillor Dakey.
Happy to move this and be very happy that we can keep the library open through the process of the works, which is one better than Nelson City. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dakey. Second, Councillor Mailing. If there's nothing further, all those in favour, please say aye. Thank you. Thank you, Richard. And then the last item is the late report in relation to regional deals. So it's fairly self-explanatory. You can read Minister Brown's request of councils. A little bit of background. This was obviously started off as a situation where the government were going to effectively invite regions. I think they mentioned 5. In my view, that was a preferable way of going about it. So identify the regions you want to have a conversation with and then have the conversation. They then subsequently decided to make it a free-for-all, but at the same time saying, well, there's only going to be 1 next year and then 2 in 2026. But it now means that every region is having to consider the whole process. We had a number of conversations between ourselves, Marlborough and Nelson, about taking a Titao Ihu approach, which was my strong preference. And if I read between the lines of central government's direction generally, either stated or unstated, or read between the lines direction, they are looking for regional conversations across a range of activities, regional deals, RIF funding, local water done well. And in my view, is they expect to see a joined up conversation across all of those activities, not just picking and choosing which ones you want to be regional on. However, as we know, Nelson made a particular decision around local water done well. Marlborough have now made a decision around regional deals that they want to do on their own. Hence the recommendation contained here that we work with Nelson to put in a register of interest, which is a very high level. We are interested, minimal other information kind of expectations or requirements, and no great anticipation that we're going to be anywhere near the top of the list because we weren't one of the 5. So it's very unlikely we're going to be one of the 1 or one of the 2. So there it is. Councillor Mackenzie, Councillor Hill, Councillor Graney.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question. So what would be the role of elected members in terms of eventually putting in a deal and the content thereof? How would elected members input into that process?
Excellent question. Haven't even thought that far ahead.
I guess then, just to register my thought, is that I would sort of expect that elected members would have input or a role, but I'm happy to park it for.
Yeah, look, I'm sure particularly where it accounts for council. The regional deals aren't necessarily council projects or council related. They may be private industry. There is a combination. Ours is likely to be led as previous things have been through the NRDA. In terms of bringing together, because the government also doesn't expect to see this to be a council. Yeah, they expect this to be a much broader conversation of which we are a part, and part of that is simply about what we see as a region. You can be sure that a lot of these projects will not be council related, because that's not what it's targeted at delivering. In fact, quite a number of them may be central government related. One of the conversations is that they're a way of packaging up a whole lot of existing, for example, road project, hospital project. There is a distinct lack of clarity about exactly what this looks like. So at this stage, it is just really a decision to register, and that we do it with Nelson. That's really the Councillor Hill.
I'm just thinking about local water done well, and Nelson saying we don't want to work with you, Tasman, and surely that would impact on perception, at least around regional deal. If you can't get yourselves together around that, when there's very strong guidance and direction about I really want you to, surely that's going to have a negative impact or influence on how we're perceived. No question there. Not even a very coherent comment, really.
Yeah, no, look, like I outlined in my introduction, my perception is, and it is literally mine, but I think there's enough evidence to suggest that the government is looking for a joined up approach across a range of different areas, and that includes local water done regional deals and RIF funding. So whether you read between the lines or you read some of the specific comments from the Minister of Local Government in his speech a couple of weeks ago about that was about both local water done well, but there was also a paragraph in there about regional deals and the expectation that you don't just turn up with a region that you've kind of constructed to apply for a deal. You need to be able to demonstrate that that region's working together more broadly, all of which I actually intuitively agree with. But that is clearly not the perception of other people. So I guess all we can do is put our best foot forward, try and encourage the regional conversations, and then everyone will make their own decisions, as they're entirely entitled to as separate councils. But I don't think it makes much sense to go ahead with a regional deal that doesn't involve Nelson. And my preference would have been Marlborough, but again, for their own specific reasons, they've decided to put in their own regional deal approach.
And their own, not with their neighbour, not down.
As far as I'm aware, it's just Marlborough.
Yeah.
Councillor Greening.
Yeah, the joint approach is certainly indicated in the minister's letter as their preference. Would be interested to know if it was disclosed why Marlborough has decided to go it alone, given they've been involved across the top of the South Island on other initiatives. So that's my first question. And the second one, again, I reiterate what's already been said before, which is while we're signalling, do we actually have an idea as a council ourselves what we're looking to do on a joint deal? Because the indications are that these are supposed to be, if you look at the Manchester City example, something where council comes to the party with funding.
So the first question is Marlborough's rationale. And I think, do we receive an email or notification of their decision, which Robin will read?
So Mayor Taylor from Marlborough says overall there was a clear message. She'd met with her councillors that Marlborough's geography was not homogenous with Nelson Tasman and that we had our own distinct economic drivers.
So that I assume removed any infrastructural investment in Picton, where all the councils will probably be supportive of.
So, like I say, my preference was to do this top of the south, but Marlborough have made that call. And the second question was,
so we're jumping into this, but do we actually know what we want, and when will we be determining?
No. So not really. We're not even 100% sure how these look. And you're correct. These are loosely, and I use the word loosely, modelled on a Manchester UK version, but that has some very distinct differences. One is the way the government puts its funding in and expects to get its return. And also, you are correct, in those cases, they are absolutely, it's a commitment of central government, private enterprise and local government funding over an extended term. I would expect if there are projects that are council owned or related, that these deals would also expect to see that source of funding, but they will also encompass projects that are 100% central government funded. For example, the road project, the hospital project, and then they may involve ones that are funded by private enterprise and central government in the aquaculture space, potentially, or the blue economy space, potentially. And then there may be situations where all three parties are expected, but that is second guessing a whole lot of future conversations. At this stage, it really is registering a very high level interest. And then there's another date, which I can't remember off the top of my head, about putting in more comprehensive proposals.
Yeah, so what are those dates, and do we have sufficient lead in time to actually have a broad discussion about what we want to achieve, if anything?
Timeframes, like everything with the current government, are quite tight.
So if we're going to commit to this, we really need to also have in play, what are our next steps to meet that criteria? Because what I don't want, and what has happened in the past is, and I've used the example of NMIT, decisions being quickly made by a very small group of people that did not involve council more broadly.
Well, I guess therein lies one of the other challenges. The more people, the more councils, the more groups, the more challenging it is to get to any conclusion. So, yep, I take your point. And so I will, assuming that this gets Nelson City buy-in as well, then I will discuss with Leonie about the process for councillor input into whatever it is that gets suggested as part of any regional deal conversation. Oh, so Nelson have already agreed. Right. That's nice. Right. Anything further? I'm happy to move the resolution. Oh, Councillor Butler.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, would we be allocating resources to do the work? I mean, I'm just concerned about staff having to prepare reports which then actually go into the ether because something changes. So how can we protect against our resources being used to do this and actually we end up not getting anything out of it?
So I'm acutely aware of the limited resources. In my conversations with the Mayor of Nelson, we both, and previously with the Mayor of Marlborough, we all understand that the chances of any tangible outcomes in the next immediate period are slim, given the indication about numbers of deals that might be completed. Therefore, pouring huge amounts of resources, not anyone's intention, certainly not in terms of the registration. That's a pretty resource not to. And then there's a lot of information that's already been generated through the briefings to incoming ministers, the work of the RDA in Marlborough, RIF funding applications that have been done by it. So there's actually quite a lot of existing information to rely on, alongside the major central government projects that obviously we're all aware of are proposed at one point in time or another in our region. So, yeah, I think no one's in the place of putting a huge amount of resource into something where realistically the outcomes in the short term are probably not that significant.
So we don't need to allocate funds to this.
We do not
at all.
No, we do not. Other than some time that will be involved, largely the NRDA will be responsible for pulling it together. And we've obviously already committed funding to them. There's no request or expectation of any more funding. Councillor.
Thanks, Chair. So NRDA, that's completely on their radar. That's a stream of work that they'll need to do, and they're not going to be saying, "Oh, we've got a bit much on here." That's
no, well, they might, but again, I'm not anticipating this being a huge amount of work initially. I'm not quite sure whether the government's going to, once the registrations of interest come through, whether they then come back and go, okay, you three spend more time and effort because we intuitively like you, or whether everyone's going to have to go through more work. That would seem unfortunate. Like I say, my strong preference was they stuck with their invitation model, and then those people could commit to putting in the resources and the effort, knowing that they're already preferred. Whereas this way, it leaves and it perpetuates the regional competition thing again, which everyone goes in and tries to outcompete each other, and it's not a particularly efficient way in my mind of going around allocating stuff, but that is what we're dealing with. So the conversation was, we're better to release register the interest. If we decide not to proceed further down the track in terms of the more detailed information, that remains an option. Okay, so I'm happy to move from the chair. Someone prepare the second. Councillor Dowler. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. And now I think that's the conclusion of the open agenda. Am I correct? So now look to move into committee. Move Councillor Mailing, second to Councillor Dowler. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Thank you.